What is up, everybody? This is Alex from IGTV. And after my review of Supergirl, I had a few people saying, please just read the comic. I think you'll actually wind up lowering your 1-star review to a 1/2 star based on how much they butchered, stomped on, sat on fire, and pissed all over the source material, and have fucked up an adaptation of this character that probably won't be attempted for a couple more generations. So well done. So I've read the full comic now. It's not particularly long. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to contrast a number of the comic panels with what I could find from the film, and bring up some of the story differences, some of what is so frustrating to me about when you have this story blueprint for something cool, and it strikes me somewhat differently than badly translating a book, for example, where it's only the written word, because there's a lot more creative liberty with what every individual reader pictures in their head, whereas a comic is a visual medium and there's color and composition. It's already fairly cinematic, so you've kind of got storyboards laid out for you. It's a visual blueprint and kind of tone map of perhaps what you should be adapting when you're doing this kind of thing. I will be spoiling the film and parts of the comic too, so make sure you read it before watching this if you don't want anything spoiled. Personally, I'd had certain elements of the comic spoiled before reading it, and it didn't really hurt my enjoyment because the real appeal to me was the artwork and the color choices. It's so vibrant and varied with the way they use color throughout to emphasize not only the environment, but the emotional weight of things. The creativity of it is just something to behold. It's very easy to quickly read through, and the general ideas, the shape of the story is kind of similar. You have equivalent characters, it's still a revenge tale, but small little tweaks to the story do so much damage to what the original was trying to accomplish. We can start with the Ruthie character, because my issue in the film is that she just didn't really add anything and was more of an annoyance and hindrance to the story, and I just didn't really understand why she was there outside of being a mirror to Supergirl and this vector for them to learn something from each other and aid each other's arcs. But in the comics, she acts as an unreliable narrator who's explaining her embellished version of what happened, giving it a really nice structure with the way it loops back round into itself and pays off the revenge arc. It also gives the story a nice writing excuse to be kind of stupid at points. There's a particular moment later on that I'll bring up that was kind of confusing, but it's just a good way of framing it to make it a bit more forgiving for some of the goofier stuff, because while it definitely is inspired by True Grit and this kind of heavy, violent Western thing it's going for, it was way more violent than I was anticipating. But as the story goes along, it kind of morphs into more of a fairy tale, which I think is quite cool. So we got to talk about Krem, who from a character design perspective is just like evil Robin Hood. He's just like a shirtless ginger guy with a bow and arrow. That's all he really needed to be. They characterize him well enough, make him a good foil, he's hateable. He's notably not a human trafficker, but he's still evil. Such a weird decision for the film to do that. It just tonally doesn't make sense for what they were going for. But when you see them right next to each other, it's just like, what was the creative intent here? It's visually noisy. It's not charming or cool or metal. It's just lame. It reminds me of when Snyder was trying to do Aquaman and they have to overcompensate and make them, yeah, we're just totally badass, aren't we? Instead of leaning into the goofier element. Like, it's Supergirl, for God's sake. It's supposed to be kind of stupid and poppy and sincere and over the top and silly. This is none of those things. And it's not like in the comic you get like an elaborate, fleshed out backstory or anything like that to him. He's just much more of a vessel to bring something out of the main two characters to get it moving. And is a nice way to explore this idea of revenge or injustice that the story explores in myriad different ways. The obvious way to faithfully translate this would be to do it in an animated form. I know it's just never going to happen, but like a maximalist adaptation of something like this would be awesome. But when you adapt it this way, it just makes it feel like they're embarrassed to be playing in the playground that they are. Like, where's the color? Where's the life? Why is it so gray? Where's the fun? This has a bit more color, because this is the equivalent section to this, which they spectacularly fuck up in the film with this unbearable teleporting action scene that's claustrophobic and this weird bus and just feels like it's wasting a bunch of time and could be taken out of the movie and nothing else would change. Whereas one of the best panels in the whole comic is from this equivalent scene, which goes into more of the cosmic stuff where there's this giant dragon that Supergirl has to take on, and it's cool not just because of the scale and scope of it, but because of the angle of it being explained to us by someone who is in awe of Supergirl from this kind of younger woman's perspective who hasn't traveled the galaxy, so she's crucial to emphasize and ground and contrast someone like Supergirl. There's a world-building cohesion to the comic that was utterly lacking in the film. Like, here's an example of one of the creatures not only drawn to perfection, it's so detailed, I love the line work, but they're cool designs and are backed up with some kind of story reason, and the occasional references to Superman are kind of cool. He doesn't literally show up in the comic like he does here. This shot. Which in my review of the movie I mentioned that I probably would have just enjoyed these two to be paired up in a film scenario, and I still think that probably would have been a better idea, just to endear the audience to the character and kind of set her up a bit better. But I'm glad the comic doesn't do that. It has its own thing going on. It doesn't need to rely on Superman to get the story to be compelling or interesting. And to be clear, I don't think that changing the source material or adapting it into a different form is inherently an issue. Obviously, you're going to have to omit some things when you're changing mediums, but this is a case where every single change, and I mean everything they changed, is worse. There's not one thing that they made better, in which case, why even adapt it if, like, you don't even really care about the sanctity of what you're adapting? Especially when it seems like such an obvious slam dunk. There's never a moment in the movie where you're like, that's cool. There's like an awe to this, there's something fantastical. They even omitted the fun dino planet, because they still incorporate the different suns, weaken them. But the expositional element is so much more elegant in how that kind of stuff is explained, especially for someone like me who has never read anything to do with Supergirl before. I know nothing about her. And outside of one or two things, it does an amazing job of establishing why she's different to Superman and why she's someone you should like or care about. Because this is a much cooler moment from the Ruthie character's perspective, because it's the first time in the story where she has to step up and kind of protect Supergirl for the first time after going on this planet-spanning adventure and learning so much and changing so much. It's kind of like a hero moment for her and a nice change up there, and shows her backbone. And yeah, of course I'm gonna like the inclusion of the dino planet. Like, what the hell? Why'd you get rid of that? That's fun. So while they do change it to have darkness like human trafficking, it's not like there wasn't heavy stuff going on in the source material. There's this whole kind of B-plot in one of the issues about this society, this planet, that has this very on-the-nose kind of class commentary told through these alien species where it's the blues and the purples, I think. And they come here because they're following the trail of Krem to try and catch up to him. And he was like arrested on this planet at some point for drunken, disorderly conduct or something. But Supergirl winds up figuring out that there's like this genocide that occurred there that links to these pirates and Krem and fleshes that out somewhat, and gives a character like Supergirl a unique challenge to come up against, this kind of like systematic injustice that she can't do anything about with super strength or laser vision. And the way that feeds into Ruthie's arc, where she has this one-track mind, she just wants revenge, and her seeing through Supergirl, who is kind of equally traumatized, which you see through the flashbacks, like in the film, to Krypton, how she still maintains her goodness and wants to be something more, even in the face of all of this pain and destruction. Especially when you get to some of the later reveals. It's like, oh, that's such a clever, cool way of summarizing these arcs. Like, here's one. Here's like a reveal. The poison and crypto thing is the same starting point, but at the end, Supergirl is just like, oh, right, like, Crypto's fine, I just made that up because she saw part of herself in Ruthie and wanted to show her that there was more to the world than just senseless revenge. And instead of, like in the movie, where Supergirl just like kills him, she just like murders Krem, the solution in the comic is that they throw him in the Phantom Zone for like 300 years, which is way more psychologically interesting. It feels way more what like a Supergirl would do, instead of just like murdering him. And here's after the time skip where the timeline catches up to an, at this point, old Ruthie, who then gets her confrontation with this old pathetic version of Krem who's like begging for forgiveness. And her response isn't to kill him, but it's also not to forgive him. She kind of bonks him on the head and just walks off. Completing her arc, showing that she's learned and changed through Supergirl is brilliant. It's such a cool idea and executed really well. There's so much energy to these panels, like the way the water's moving and the wind and the cape, the ripped up cape, the hair. This is like excellent stuff. And the color choices here, it's like gorgeous. Then we got this in the movie. It's like Mad Max. It's just horrible. It's hideous. Like, where's the vibrancy? Where's the high contrast? Where's the colors? Ugh. So I mentioned about the comic I was kind of like confused by. This was also one of the best moments. So Krem has this like MacGuffin device thing that is magic of some kind. It's like this white orb that apparently are really rare and it can chase after you and teleport you, which is how Supergirl winds up on the planet with the sun that hurts her and has the dinosaurs everywhere, where it weakens her so much they've got to wait for sunset so they can escape the planet. But after the first time they've dealt with one of these MacGuffin orbs, Krem has another one, but this time she outsmarts him by running out of the comic, like in a meta way. She like hops on a super horse who is a character called Comet and like runs out of the comic literally. Like you can see the ink, she's like running out of it in a meta way. It goes black and white. It's really cool. Even though I have no idea what this horse character is, it does just come out of nowhere. Apparently it's something from the 60s where it's actually like a centaur that was cursed by Circe and has Superman's powers or something, and actually was secretly like dating Supergirl at some point or something just insane, and very much acts kind of like a Deus Ex Machina, which when I was reading I was like, where did this come from? This is so strange, but kind of works from the fairy tale-ish unreliable narrator. This is from the perspective of this, at the time, young girl experiencing this, so you could interpret it as an embellishment from a child's perspective, but that was definitely a what the hell is going on? Outside of how cool this stuff is, and especially how it's visually communicated. This is very, very cool stuff. What else was there to show off? There's some cool character moments showing the grief and pain of the main character. The visual of her of curling into the fetal position in the inferno of a sun is a really cool image and character moment. But look at some of this art. It's incredible. It's so detailed. It just makes me feel like everyone involved in the movie like hated it. Why would you not want to channel this in some way? Because I really think a sincere adaptation of this would connect with people. People would love it. And now, because of how shitty the film is, it's just never gonna happen. And sure, you've always got the comics available, but people don't really read comics. Not like they watch movies anyway. So while I don't think it's like a perfect comic or anything, it's not like the best I've ever read, I'd give it like a high 3.5 star, 4. It is a bummer, and I'm definitely lowering my rating on this because there's just no excuse at this point. So let's log it again. Lower that to 0.5 star. There we go. Nice and hyperbolic. I read the comic, no excuse for this pitiful translation. Okay, so let me know your thoughts on the comic in particular. Do you agree with my assessment? Does it make the movie better or worse to you? Am I being too harsh on the movie? Let me know. I'll see you on the next vid. Bye!